Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Convos with Anita Santiago podcast. I am your host, Anita Santiago. Please like, share, leave a review for the podcast on all the major podcast platforms. Appreciate if you follow the podcast on all the social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And if you want to reach out to me about the show or you have any feedback or suggestions, you can reach me at convoscws@gmail.com. I want to take a little time and expand on the topic from the last show. Still talking about supporting men as they struggle and deal with many things in life. I really feel that since it's Men's Mental Health Month, I wanted to bring up a topic of building community for men. And this is important because a lot of our societal norms, expectations, and gender roles kind of discourage men from building strong communities that are supportive. So let me start out by saying that as individuals, we all need community, right? We need to find our tribe and those people that pour into us and support us. But in our culture, specifically in the United States, men are seen to have this type of masculinity that for some reason community is not important to them. And I would just say, from my vantage point and the work I've done in mental health, I think this is a topic that's very timely and we need to kind of explore because men need community. Absolutely. Men need groups, organizations, ways to find support as they navigate unique experiences that women really can't relate to. So let's kind of unpack this a little bit and see how those of us that support the men in our lives, as well as those men that are out there, what does it mean to build community? What does that look like? What does it require? How is it helpful? And then what can we do about it? So let's kind of start with the basics. In the United States, going all the way back to the days of cowboys, masculinity has often been presented as something um, unique, strong, bold, and not requiring the other people to make that masculinity work. So if you think of the concept of like uh, the old movies with the cowboys, the good guys and the bad guys, and how that masculinity was projected. Now, for some of you, this might be before your time. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can go back and research some of the old black and white cowboy movies, but that's what I mean, where this sense of invincibility um, and was connected to masculinity. And those strong men, those good men, really didn't need anyone. They were self sufficient. This is the stereotype that I'm talking about that was projected in those movies. And they were very seldom seen to have emotional expression or vulnerability. They were usually presented as rugged, rough, efficient, knowledgeable. So that's part of the challenge in building community is this expectation that somehow masculinity equates to isolation or aloneness. Isolation is another big issue that I believe gets in the way of building community. Men don't typically tend to be isolated because they want to, my opinion. Men deal with a lot of different things. And since they are socialized to be less emotionally expressive, men are socialized to figure it out and do what you got to do. There can be increased loneliness or isolation as men just withdraw to deal with all the things that they have to deal with. Why? Because when they talk about it, the people around them don't really get it, or they're critical or judgmental, or there just isn't a safe space, a comfortable space for men to really be able to deal with their issues openly and freely. So when we think about how men are socialized different from women, and these concepts of um, masculinity, uh, rugged individualism, isolation, emotional flatness, we get the kind of situation that we see now where it's difficult for men to build community often. Men need social connection. Men need better emotional, physical, and psychological support, in my opinion. And this means that those of us that would be a part of that community, we need to understand that for men to be in a safe place and to be comfortable, we have to have shared values. We have to have a passion for supporting men. We have to create safe spaces. One of the most frustrating things to me in the internet space is this argument that seems to occur about who's right. Is the woman's perspective right or the man's perspective right? Why can't we have a shared perspective that we want each other to be okay? Why can't our efforts go towards breaking down some of these traditional thoughts that we have to say, hey, we want to get past that and we want to help build community? So, men not being vulnerable. I have heard so many podcasts and influencers, male and female, talk about the difficulties of men being vulnerable. And what I've heard said over and over again is, once men feel vulnerable or they allow themselves to be vulnerable and somebody fumbles the bag, they're not going to do it anymore. We have to honor and cherish when the men in our lives, whether it's our sons, cousins, nephews, brothers, uncles, we have to honor and cherish those moments where they feel comfortable enough with us to be vulnerable. And we have to take that information and be careful with it. Don't smack people over the head with a judgment. Well, you shouldn't have done this or you shouldn't have done that. If a man is safe enough to be vulnerable with you, treat it like what it is. It's an honor. It's something that um, we should hold dear and say, okay, this man feels comfortable enough to be vulnerable, and how can I not only honor that, but how can I be part of the community that says, hey, it's okay for you to express your emotions. It's okay for you to open up. This is a safe space. So, for those of us that want to be part of the community, we have to understand that showing emotion and being vulnerable doesn't make men weak. It helps them to be able to deal with the world that they live in. Emotions. Let's talk about emotions. So I hear on these podcasts and influencers say, men have to talk about how they feel. They have to learn how to say how they feel. Well, guess what? When those men were young boys, what were they told? Don't cry. You're not a punk. Buck up. Stick your chest out. And honestly, do young boys have the opportunity to learn how to manage their emotions? Some of what we're seeing in the news that's so concerning with people having emotional outbursts that sometimes can be harmful to other people might be because those people don't have the skills to manage their emotions, to be able to express their emotions in a safe way, and to use skills that allow them to be vulnerable when appropriate And what does that do? That allows men to start the process of building meaningful connections in their lives. I know that there's a lot of thought about the superficial nature of relationships, and oftentimes men feel like it's very difficult to build connections. Well, part of that is you have men who may not have the the skills, the same skills as women, because women are socialized just the opposite. We are socialized to love and nurture and go all out from a very young age. So many men don't have that same level of skill set. I'm not saying all, I just said many. So again, this could be ways that make it difficult to build community. Negative experiences, men who have been through a little something, something. They've had maybe negative experiences in marriages, relationships, situationships, and now maybe that rejection or betrayal that they've experienced led to trust issues. And that goes back to not being able to uh, to develop connection. Because now I got trust issues. So I'm not trying to go deep with anyone. And some of these perspectives, I'm not saying every man on the planet does this, but sometimes these perspectives come as a means as a means of self-preservation. Men are trying to keep it together and be the best that they can be in spite of everything that they've gone through. So they learn how to cope. They learn how to deal with these things the best way they can. And unfortunately, sometimes the result is it makes it hard to build community, right? And so those are just a couple of examples that men may experience that get in the way. So if you're finding it hard to find your tribe, you're a man, you're finding it hard to find your tribe. What does it look like to have a sense of community? I don't necessarily think that the community has to be all male. However, I will say that I feel that spaces where men can come together in a safe way are usually very good for those men that are involved. So you have volunteer organizations, mentoring organizations, fraternal organizations, social organizations, business organizations, what to just to name a few. But what do good positive male communities look like? Well, first and foremost, they provide safety. They create an environment where men are free to be who they are and without having to feel like they're masking or they can't say what they want to say. So first and foremost, a good community is going to provide safety. There's going to be shared purpose and interest. So if it's a social organization, everybody in that organization has a common or shared purpose or interest. If it's a sports club or a hobby group, maybe you're into kayaking or hiking, and there's a group that you find that provides community. Bottom line is that the men that are involved in that community can share some common ground, which is very, very important. Being able to be oneself, that vulnerability and authenticity. If the space is safe, then men feel more comfortable sharing from a place of authenticity, of being who they are. And that's very important. And those men will hold each other accountable and support each other in ways that make sense for that group. And that's what a strong community can look like. Um, I we should encourage we should encourage organizations and groups and activities that are trying to create community for men. We can support that. We can support it monetarily. We can donate our time, our ideas, collaborations, so that these organizations continue to thrive and do the good work that they do. When it comes to isolation, uh, communities can help men be less alone, because there are people that you're interacting with socially, and especially if you have difficulty trusting or have difficulty establishing relationships, you find a community that's strong and nurturing and thriving, and that could provide some social outlets and connections that are sorely needed. Do communities have to be in person? Do you have to go to a place? Not necessarily. There are online communities and groups and book clubs and all kind of things online, and they do the same thing. They give a sense of belonging, social connection, a space that's safe, a place to be vulnerable, and maybe people that you have something in common with. So, online communities are just as effective as communities in purpose. That in person. I'm sorry. So again, these are some ideas about building community for men. Now, this is the part that really makes community cool, right? For many men who struggle with their emotional health, their psychological health, even their physical health, being part of a community can really help those three areas. How is that? Well, if you're struggling with emotional health, let's say, you just all over the board, um, you have trouble keeping your emotions at a balanced level. Well, being in a community, being with others, connection can really help you build those skills in dealing with emotions, identifying emotions, um, and support and help if you need it. Maybe there are other men in that community that have experienced what you experienced, and now they can kind of share with you how they worked on that. Men and emotions are a very complicated topic. And just saying, hey, talk about your emotions and just be open and just, go to a therapist and it'll be fine. Well, maybe not. If you got trust issues from the jump, you might not be able to sit down and talk with a therapist because that's just how you feel about it. But when you get in a community with others, maybe that becomes normalized. Maybe what you feel and how you've been approaching things, you weren't the only one. And now you have other people that can help you move forward in that area. So I think that's a big benefit of being in a community. Let's say physical health. Um, I always talk about my gym. Shout out to Team Workout Heads. I love my gym family. Um, Again, a sense of community, finding others that you have shared purpose and goal with, that you can share different things, strategies, workout routines. You can hold each other accountable. You can see each other progressing. And again, that social connection. So that's a way community can help men with their physical health. As a woman, I find it hard to work out and stay motivated. I'm sure it's the same for some men. Finding a community where you have people that are like-minded. They want to work out. They want to live healthy. They want to eat right. Well, now you have men that you can share that with, and all of a sudden you may see yourself crushing those goals that you couldn't get traction on before. And I want to talk about mental health because that's my area, that's my specialty. When it comes to mental health, sometimes being a man with a mental health diagnosis can amplify the feelings of isolation, the feelings of being socially withdrawn, the feelings of not trusting people and systems and situations. It's very important for men who struggle with things like anxiety, depression, PTSD is a big one, to find positive support with other men that will encourage them. If you've never dealt with a mental health diagnosis, then you may not understand how difficult that can be. But having a sense of community and people who understand what you're going through can motivate you to keep up with your therapy appointments or keep up with your doctor's appointments or to have um, conversations with your medical team about how your treatment is going. And also taking away the stigma of dealing with a diagnosis. You are a person with a diagnosis. You're not your diagnosis. And having a community of other men who can really understand that and support you in that way, I think is very, very critical. And quite frankly, in the mental health field, in challenging areas, one of the things we see a lot is that men don't have the deep connections and social supports that are often needed to navigate different mental health experiences. So, again, that's another way I feel that building community around men can be helpful. So, I want to encourage everyone. I want to encourage those men that are part of communities to keep reaching out to men in your orbit. For men looking for community, be diligent and keep searching. Find your tribe. And for those of us that support men, encourage the men in our lives to find community. Offer some suggestions, not judgments, not criticisms, but suggestions. Hey, I heard this group was meeting up and I thought you might be interested. Here's the link. And then let them explore and see if that's good for them. If you have young boys in your life, young teenagers in your life, introduce them to the concept of community. I know we typically do that with sports. We're going to put you in football club or soccer club. Okay, that's cool. But there are other types of community as well. Whatever works. But let's just push forward to encourage this concept of building community around men and doing all we can to support it. Volunteer, like I said in the opening, if you're like me, I do a lot of volunteer work. Get in there, volunteer, maybe support an organization, donate, buy a book, uh, leave a review on a podcast or something like that. Whatever you can do to help those organizations out, because if they're doing the heavy lift and uh, doing the work of helping men build community, we should 100% get behind that. So, thank you guys for stopping by to the Convos with Anita Santiago podcast. Again, please like, share, follow, and subscribe on all the podcast platforms. You can email me at convoscws@gmail.com with any comments, suggestions that you have about the show. And again, don't be afraid to encourage community for the men in your life. Thanks for stopping by and happy listening.